this video, we will guide you through the general indications to fill in your tax return. On this first page, you are asked to give your consent for automated taxation. Automatic taxation is carried out without the intervention of an employee of the tax authority, ACD, and can be checked by an employee within 5 years. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to follow the links provided for more details. Starting in 2024, you will have to answer a series of questions to verify whether you are one of the people who qualify for the electronic procedure. If you do not meet the criteria, you will be redirected to a PDF or paper return. Here is a list of ineligible cases. If you do not have a Lux Trust product, if you do not have a national identification number, for non-residents, if you have opted for assimilation and you wish to revoke this application, for married persons or those in a partnership, if you are applying for individual assessment, if you have been married more than once during the taxation year, if you do not have the same country of residence as your spouse, if you have changed your country of residence during the taxation year, if you are requesting a tax regularization by annual adjustment, if you want to make a rectifying declaration. Make sure you specify whether you are the taxpayer or a representative. If you are completing your own tax return, please select Contribuable Taxpayer. If you are entrusting your tax return to a representative, such as an accountant or a relative, check the Mandataire Representative option. If you have already filed a tax return in the past, enter your file number and select the correct tax office. If you click on one of the locations, you will see either the municipalities or the streets that the relevant tax office manages. The competent office is the one corresponding to the situation on 31st December of the taxation year. If you have checked Contribuable Taxpayer, your personal information will be automatically pre-filled. You must provide at least a telephone number or an email address. Of course, you can provide both if you wish, but this is not mandatory. Then, if your family situation has changed during the year, such as an account of divorce or marriage, remember to indicate those changes. The tax situation on 1st of January of the taxation year is not always sufficient to correctly determine the tax. Make sure to include all the relevant information to avoid any errors in your assessment. To enter your address, start with the postcode. The other information will be automatically suggested for you. If you have had several addresses during the year, do not forget to indicate them. To do this, simply check "Oui, yes" to the question below in order to update your information correctly. 3 situations may arise in determining whether the spouse has a representative or not. The first situation is when the taxpayer completes and signs the return for his/her spouse. Therefore, the taxpayer acts as a representative for his/her spouse. The advantages are: first, only one MyGuichet space is necessary. The taxpayer uses his/her own MyGuichet space, and it is not necessary for the spouse to create one. In addition, when signing, the taxpayer can sign for himself/herself, as well as for his/her spouse, thus simplifying the process. This avoids complications related to signatures, especially in the case where the tax return is sent in the MyGuichet space of the spouse, who would otherwise have to sign in turn before sending it to the tax authority, ACD. On the other hand, the disadvantage is that you will have to attach Annex 101 before being able to send a tax return. The second situation is when the spouse signs his/her tax return personally. The advantages are: transparency for the spouse. The spouse is the one who submits the tax return and can check the taxpayer's entries before sending it. He/she can also consult the tax return in PDF format at any time in his/her MyGuichet space. The disadvantage is the signing and sending of the tax return between the two spaces. You can find more information on how this works by clicking on the following link. The third situation is when a third party, such as an accountant, signs a tax return for the spouse. If you have selected Contribuable Taxpayer on the Indication Générale Mandataire Contribuable, General Indications Representative Taxpayer page, your spouse's information will be automatically pre-filled. Please note, unlike the taxpayer's data, the spouse's information can be modified. You can adjust it if necessary. As on the taxpayer's page, you can modify certain fields such as the email address or telephone number. Here too, one of the fields must be completed. You can provide both if you wish. Please describe the various family situations for the taxation year. The tax situation on 1st of January of the taxation year is not always sufficient to correctly determine the tax. If the spouse shares the same address, there's nothing to change. Otherwise, you can change the address. The online declaration automatically identifies minor children in the household who entitle you to an abatement, as well as those outside the household who entitle you to exceptional charges. Also note that a child who lives under the same roof as you is not necessarily considered part of the tax household. We will discuss the details of children in this distinction in another dedicated video. We have taken an example with two children who are descendants of the spouses or partners. The Numéro d'identification nationale, national identification number, is optional. But if the child has one, it must of course be entered. A series of questions will then be asked to determine whether the child forms part of the tax household or is outside the tax household. If you indicate that your spouse has a representative, this page will be displayed. By checking oui, yes to the questions Le contribuable est-il mandataire du contribuable conjoint partenaire? Is the taxpayer the representative of the taxpayer spouse partner? The spouse will no longer have to take any action except to give his/her consent via the mandate agreement. If no is checked, the identity of the representative will be requested. This consent is given via Annex 101, which the taxpayer can file and sign for the spouse.